All right, we all know Denver's housing market is tough for everyone. And just for renters who are struggling to make it, it can be even tougher, especially in those lucky enough to get a voucher from the Denver Housing Authority that could pay for some of their rent. Well, getting a voucher is one thing, and then finding a landlord who will accept rent payments from housing assistance programs like Section 8, well, that is a whole other issue. And Denver City Councilwoman Robin Kinich has a proposal that would ease that process and is here to talk about this with us. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Ann.
What's behind this proposal?
Well, it's hard enough to afford an apartment in Denver, but imagine that you have an apartment you can't afford, but your landlord says to you, I'm sorry, you are paying for this with some disability check income. We don't accept that. We only accept wages from work. Or you have a voucher that's going to help you pay for it. I'm sorry, I can't accept it. This is about helping folks who find a place they could afford, but not being turned away because of how they pay their rent.
And you have said, you've described this as discrimination happening here in Denver, right?
I believe so. When you've got two families, both of which can afford the apartment, but one gets turned away maybe because child support is part of their income, or maybe student loans are part of their income, that is a form of discrimination that a number of states and cities have outlawed. So we're looking at here in Denver getting our laws in line with some of those best practices.
So what's wrong, though, with landlords saying, I want the best possible renter for this property that I've put my hard work into?
It's important for landlords to be able to screen their renters. So you can look at past rental history. You can look at whether they've paid their rent on time. Those are all important and legitimate ways that landlords have to screen tenants, but they shouldn't matter where the money that they're paying. As long as that source of funding is legal, there shouldn't be turning someone away just because of how they're paying. In fact, many of these programs are more reliable. Maybe any one of us might lose our job in the next day or so, you know, if something happens. But if you are a disabled person and you receive disability income, that's a very stable source of income. It doesn't put the landlord at risk. So
what happens with this proposal? This would be a new law?
Yes, it would be an amendment to Denver's anti-discrimination ordinance, and it needs to go through a council process. So we'll have our first committee hearing on July 18th, and if it's approved, it'll go on through the full council. And then our updated anti-discrimination ordinance, we would spend a few months educating and doing prevention. Our goal isn't to catch anybody. Our goal is to prevent folks from being turned away. So we would spend a few months educating both landlords and tenants about the new law before it goes into effect, probably in January.
So what would you say then is the benefit to Denver?
I think for Denver, we have an interest in the stability of households, right? We lose both talent and a workforce when those folks can't live in Denver and stay here. Children get disrupted when they can't find a place to live. We have homelessness even occurring where folks have a gap. They've lost housing, they need to get new housing, and that homelessness becomes a cost to Denver, perhaps an emergency shelter, perhaps an extra social services. So it's both good for our economy, it's good for our communities and the stability of our schools, as well as for our own budget to make sure that we're helping folks be stably housed to the extent we can.
So people who rely on these Section 8 vouchers, how big of a problem is it that they can't get housing? Well,
we have about 6,000 folks that get vouchers through the Housing Choice Voucher, the federal program that DHA administers that you mentioned. And about 12% of them can't find housing in Denver, which means they have to travel to Adams County, Arapahoe County, or one of our neighboring communities. Now, there's other voucher programs as well, so we don't have an exact number of folks that are being turned away, but we have some survey data that shows that about 10% of renters have been turned away based on their source of income.
And these provide about $1,200 a month, but that barely even covers rent in Denver right now.
Well, it really depends. Many of the folks who receive housing assistance are working, and I think your viewers who are, you know, child care providers who work in retail, they know they're working hard, but sometimes you need a little something to get over the gap. So many of our voucher holders have paid income from wages as well as a little help. Now, some of our disabled folks, it might be their sole source of income, and they probably do need to find a unit that is really affordable. They probably have an additional subsidy. It really just depends, but this source of income anti-discrimination ordinance is for everyone. It could be for the college kid who is receiving student loans and needs housing to stay in school, and that student loan is a reliable source of funding. So it's not just for low-income folks, this ordinance.
Sure. And so if this does become law, how would it be enforced?
We would have a complaint system just like any other discrimination case, where if you believed you were discriminated against, you would report it to our agency in the city, and then they would investigate. We believe that it's important to have an administrative process. This isn't about a race to the courthouse. This is about getting real cases investigated quickly, and if there are really important facts, that they get all those out, and then very modest penalties if you fail to end the discrimination. But it gives them the right. For example, if you go on Craigslist right now, you might see an ad that says, "We don't accept Section 8," and it might be as simple as our agency advising them that is a prohibited advertising. And so we can use a bunch of methods, including counseling and advisements before we go to penalties.
Okay, so with 30 seconds left, what do you think? Do you think this will pass? Do you think this will move forward?
I think it's a really important time in Denver for us to use every tool we can. We can't just build our way out of an affordability crisis. We have to give people access to existing units. So my colleagues were helping to shape this idea before I brought it forward, and they've been very encouraging about it. So I'm very hopeful.
Okay, we will be watching July 18th, you said. City Council
First committee
looks at this.
vote.
Okay,
yes.
Looking forward to
Thanks for your
what
interest,
happens.
Ann.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, if you ever have a question or a segment idea, tweet us at Denver 7 Politics. And don't forget, you can watch today's segments anytime at thedenverchannel.com/politicsunplugged. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you back here next Sunday, and have a good week.